In the shadow of the Cold War, small nations became the silent battlegrounds of global empires. Nowhere was this struggle more devastating than in Afghanistan, a land caught between superpowers, where diplomacy turned to invasion and resistance turned to endless war. This is not just the story of one country. It is the story of how great power rivalries redrew borders, toppled governments, and ignited conflicts that continue to shape our world today.
Reminded us that we should be proud of our younger generation.
Early 1970s, Richard Nixon, President of the United States, and Henry Kissinger, National Security Advisor, were redefining American foreign policy. Their goal was clear: to contain the Soviet Union and establish a global balance of power. Nixon, through historic trips to China and negotiations with Moscow, sought to diplomatically and strategically encircle the USSR. In this grand game, Afghanistan, a country bordering the Soviet Union at the crossroads of Central Asia, the Middle East, and South Asia, slowly gained new significance. In the 1960s, Afghanistan was ruled by King Zahir Shah, who had remained on the throne for nearly 4 decades. His reign kept the country poor and underdeveloped, yet relatively stable. Caught between East and West, Afghanistan stayed on the sidelines of the Cold War, avoiding deep entanglement in the global rivalry. Washington quietly sought gradual influence in Kabul through economic aid and cultural exchanges. But this calm was a prelude to a storm that was soon to arrive. April 1978, leftist officers loyal to the Soviet-influenced People's Democratic Party overthrew Daoud Khan. The Soviet Union immediately recognized the new government and began military and economic aid, but forced reforms and anti-religious policies deeply hurt Afghanistan's traditional society and planted seeds of rebellion in villages and mountains. 1 year later, a crisis erupted within the People's Democratic Party. Hafizullah Amin took power, and Nur Muhammad Taraki was killed. Amin's education in the US and rumors of secret contacts with American diplomats worried Moscow. December 1979, Leonid Brezhnev, Soviet leader, ordered the 40th Army to enter Afghanistan from the northern borders. In a special operation, Amin was killed and Babrak Karmal took his place. The Soviet invasion triggered a reaction from the West. The U.S. imposed economic sanctions on Moscow, including grain embargoes and the boycott of the 1980 Moscow Olympics. But behind the scenes, a more important decision had been made. Washington saw Afghanistan as an opportunity to trap the Soviet Union in a war of attrition. Under the covert Cyclone operation, one of the largest CIA projects, billions of dollars in weapons and equipment were funneled through Pakistan's intelligence service to the Mujahideen. Saudi Arabia also covered half of the costs. Pakistan's religious schools became centers for raising a new generation of fighters. Stinger shoulder-fired missiles changed the war's balance. For the first time, Soviet helicopters and planes were shot down, one after another, in Afghan skies. In 1986, Dr. Najibullah replaced Babrak Karmal. He launched the National Reconciliation Plan, but distrust and violence undermined the effort. At the same time, Mikhail Gorbachev in Moscow sought to reduce foreign expenses and end the war.
I've just received a briefing from my national security advisors on the contents of the proposed Geneva agreements on Afghanistan that would provide for the complete withdrawal of Soviet occupation forces from that country. I believe the U.S. can now join the Soviet Union as a guarantor of the Geneva Instruments. I have therefore asked Secretary Shultz to represent us at a signing ceremony for the historic accords scheduled to take place in Geneva later this week.
The 1988 Geneva Agreements paved the way for Soviet withdrawal. February 15, 1989, the last Soviet soldier crossed across the Friendship Bridge. In Washington, this day was called the Soviet Vietnam, a major Cold War victory rooted in Nixon-era calculations. But Soviet withdrawal did not mean peace. The 1990s began with civil war among Mujahideen factions. Afghanistan, a stateless ruin, burned in deadly rivalries. The power vacuum brought the Taliban to the stage, a movement that quickly controlled much of the country and, by hosting al-Qaeda, turned Afghanistan into a global terrorism hub. The story of Afghanistan, from Nixon's calculations to the bloody Cold War battlefield, from devastation to the return of war. A story still unfinished and alive on the pages of contemporary history.